They said it was lost. They said it was gone, forever. But some legends refuse to stay buried. They simply wait for the right moment and the right hands to awaken. Marco didn't believe in ghosts, but the air in the Tuscan barn felt heavy with history. He was there for a routine appraisal of forgotten farm equipment, the kind of small, thankless job that barely kept his struggling Medina restoration shop, Rosso Perfetto, afloat. The barn was owned by an elderly, reclusive family who simply wanted the old scrap gone before winter. Deep inside the structure, obscured by towering stacks of ancient hay and farming implements, sat a colossal, decaying tarp. The outline beneath was low, wide, and unmistakably sculpted. Marco approached, his heart pounding a rhythm against the silent dust. He pulled the tarp back. What lay before him was both a nightmare and a miracle. A 1962 Ferrari 250 GTO. Its iconic scarlet paint was barely visible under a thick crust of grime, and the nose was crumpled from a severe angled impact. The windshield was spiderwebbed, and the driver's side door was missing, leaving a cavernous gap in the flawless Pininfarina design. This wasn't just a Ferrari, it was the car. Its chassis number, faintly visible on the frame rail, confirmed it was chassis number 376, a car officially reported destroyed in a European endurance race decades ago. Its current value, even as a wreck, started at $50 million. Marco felt the initial disbelief and excitement give way to a cold, hard realization. The true value of this car wasn't in its intact status, but in the sheer impossibility of its restoration. The GTO's legendary lightweight construction meant the damage was structural. The aluminum panels were twisted, and the bespoke, thin-wall tubular chassis was compromised at several key points near the engine bay, the very heart of the car's dynamic performance. The owner, overwhelmed and uninterested in the legal complexities, simply sold the wreck and the barn contents to Marco for a fraction of its scrap value, demanding only anonymity. Marco had risked every last lira of his shop's capital. He now owned a legend, but he also owned a catastrophe, a multi-million-dollar masterpiece that could break his business or cement his legacy forever. The pressure to return this ghost to its scarlet glory was immense. He carefully secured the GTO, understanding his restoration work would be the ultimate test of human engineering against the brute force of time and impact. Stop right there. Marco just acquired one of the most valuable wrecks in history, but the damage to this Ferrari 250 GTO is catastrophic. Restoring the tubular chassis and aluminum body is nearly impossible. You won't believe the engineering challenge ahead. Hit that subscribe button now and give this video a like. We need your support to see this legend drive again. Comment below. Should Marco keep the original engine or rebuild a new one? Let's get back to the impossible restoration. Back in Medina, the GTO sat under specialized lights. The sheer scale of the damage was evident. The tubular chassis, designed for maximum rigidity and minimal weight, had buckled in a controlled collapse around the engine. The damage wasn't just structural. It was an insult to the purity of the car's original design. Marco's first phase was forensic engineering. He used a highly specialized laser scanning system to create a perfect digital twin of the wrecked chassis. This was essential to identify the exact deformation and to create reference points for the restoration. The core challenge was clear. The compromised tubes needed replacement, but factory blueprints were non-existent, and the original welding techniques were a lost art. Marco decided on a radical, uncompromising path. He would rebuild the damaged section of the chassis using newly sourced, period-correct tubing, thin wall, high-grade steel alloy matched exactly to the composition of the original 1962 frame. This required commissioning a specific metallurgical foundry. The new tubes had to be cut, bent, and TIG welded to the existing chassis, replicating the specific, slight imperfections of the original artisans. This was not repair. It was an act of historical preservation. The bodywork was equally demanding. The aluminum shell, hand-formed over a wooden buck in the 1960s, was delicate. The crumpled nose and missing door section required Marco to become an aluminum alchemist. He built a custom wooden buck section, precisely matching the damaged areas. Using traditional English wheeling and panel beating techniques, He spent months hammering, shaping, and stretching new aluminum sheets to perfectly match the original lines. The challenge was maintaining the metal's thickness. If too thin, the shape would be weak. If too thick, the car would lose its legendary weight advantage. The damaged engine, the legendary Colombo V12, was the one mercy. The engine block, protected by the collapsing chassis tubes, had survived the impact with minimal structural damage. However, every single component, from the triple Weber carburetors to the delicate cylinder heads, had to be disassembled, cleaned, and meticulously inspected for stress fractures. The level of detail was exhausting. The goal was not just to run the V12, but to restore its original sound and power curve. Marco's crew spent 2 months on the engine alone, using specialized sonic cleaning techniques to purge decades of dust and microcorrosion. The engine was slowly returning from the dead, its raw, aggressive potential awaiting the resurrection of its chassis. With the chassis certified and the engine rebuilt, the restoration moved to the high-stakes phase, marrying the two and restoring the car's dynamic systems. The rebuilt chassis section had to seamlessly accept the V12, and the suspension geometry had to be perfect to handle the GTO's legendary high-speed performance. The suspension and braking systems, severely damaged in the crash, required replacement. Since original parts were non-existent, Marco had to source period-correct components and blueprint them, disassemble, check every dimension against original specifications, and rebuild them to modern safety standards while maintaining historical accuracy. This involved custom machining new brake rotors and calipers to match the original size, using modern alloys for enhanced durability. The intricate gearbox and rear axle were disassembled and rebuilt. The gears, though not damaged by the impact, were worn by decades of hard driving before the crash. Marco painstakingly replaced the synchros and bearings, ensuring the legendary clack-clack sound of the GTO's gated shifter was perfectly preserved. The entire driveline was then balanced to less than a gram of tolerance, a necessary step for a car designed to exceed 170 miles per hour. The interior restoration was where the car's soul truly returned. The racing seats, originally upholstered in simple cloth, were torn and stained. The minimalist dashboard was shattered. Marco's upholsterer, a third-generation artisan, sourced original spec Rosso red cloth for the seats and recreated the simple, elegant black dashboard panel, using original spec Veglia instruments that Marco salvaged and restored himself. The goal was not to make the interior look new, but to make it look preserved, a difficult balance between erasing the damage and retaining the patina of its racing history. The final body prep was an act of faith. The metal was flawless, the panel gaps tighter than the original factory standard. The paint, the legendary Rosso Corsa, was applied in 7 microscopic layers, using pigments chemically matched to the original 1962 formula. When the clear coat cured, the car was no longer a ghost. It was a reflection of perfection. The final piece of the body puzzle was the door, meticulously constructed from scratch to fit the newly repaired chassis opening. The moment of truth arrived, the Ferrari Classisch certification. This independent inspection is the highest authority on Ferrari originality and authenticity. A team of engineers and historians descended upon Marco's shop, scrutinizing every weld, every paint layer, and every engine component. They meticulously compared the restored chassis section to their archival microfiche, ensuring the historical integrity was maintained. The final verdict was a triumph. The car was certified. Marco's work was deemed preservational perfection, acknowledging that the restoration went beyond repair to honor the original engineering philosophy. The restored 250 GTO was now one of the most authentically restored examples in the world, its value now reaching its full potential, estimated at over $80 million. Marco, who risked everything, sold the car to a private collector who promised to race it, honoring its legacy. The final price, undisclosed, was massive. After paying off his debts and the immense cost of the specialized labor and materials, totaling over $2.5 million USD, Marco's shop was saved. The GTO had not made him rich beyond measure, but it had secured his legacy, ensuring Rosso Perfetto would thrive. He kept one small memento, a tiny, crumpled piece of the original aluminum body panel, mounted in his office, a reminder of the fragility of legends and the resilience of human skill. The GTO was gone, but the sound of its V12, tested one last time on the quiet roads outside Medina, was the ultimate reward. The legend was not just awakened, it was perfected. The story of the forgotten legend proves that the true value of a masterpiece is not in its price tag, but in the passion and integrity of the hands that bring it back to life. For Marco, the restoration of the 250 GTO was not just a job, it was the perfection of a lifetime's dedication. If you want to uncover more stories of impossible restorations and automotive miracles, make sure you hit that subscribe button now and join us for the next great find.